The crystalline spires of New Helios pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of three moons in an endless dance of shadow and radiance. Among these architectural marvels, Theron Vale moved with practiced grace, his tall frame casting long shadows across the pristine memorial gardens. His silvered skin caught the starlight, and his eyes, deep pools of swirling amber, held the weight of centuries. As first guardian of the Heliosian High Council, Theron commanded respect throughout the 12 systems. Yet here, in the quiet solitude of the memorial gardens, he was simply a father. His weekly pilgrimages to his daughter's memorial had become as natural as breathing, though his people had long since abandoned such sentimental practices. The memorial itself was a masterpiece of Heliosian craftsmanship, a towering spiral of luminescent crystal that seemed to capture and amplify the starlight. Within its core, encoded in patterns of light and shadow, were the memories of Aria, his daughter who had dared to question their society's rigid devotion to logic and order. As Theron approached the memorial, something caught his attention, a disturbance in the perfectly maintained garden. There, curled at the base of Aria's memorial, lay a small figure. His enhanced vision quickly identified it as a human child, no more than 8 cycles old by their measurements. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves around her face, and her clothes bore the marks of a difficult journey. Theron's first instinct was to summon the security forces. Humans were forbidden in the inner sanctums of New Helios, their presence considered a contamination of Heliosian purity. Yet something held him back. Perhaps it was the way the child had chosen this spot, of all places, to seek refuge. Or perhaps it was the echo of Aria's voice in his memories, always arguing for compassion over protocol. He approached carefully, his movements deliberately slow to avoid startling the child. As he drew closer, she stirred, eyes fluttering open to reveal irises of deep green, a color that reminded him painfully of Aria's favorite gardens. "Are you lost, small one?" Theron asked, his universal translator converting his harmonic speech into human standard. The child sat up quickly, pressing herself against the memorial's base. Fear flashed across her face, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Curiosity. I don't know where I am," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "The lights led me here." Theron's interest peaked. The memorial's guidance systems were keyed to Heliosian biology. No human should have been able to perceive them, let alone follow them. "What is your name?" "Lyra," she answered, gathering her courage. "Are you going to hurt me?" The question struck him like a physical blow. In all his centuries, no being had dared ask him such a direct question about his intentions. "No," he found himself saying, "but you are somewhere you should not be. How did you come to be here?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "There was a crash. My family. We were on a transport ship. There was a bright light. And then," she trailed off, her small hands clutching at the fabric of her clothes. Theron's mind raced through the implications. A human transport crash would explain the recent disturbances in the outer defense grid, but for this child to have made it all the way to the memorial gardens, it should have been impossible. As he considered his options, a soft chime emanated from his communication device. The council would be expecting his presence at the morning deliberations. Protocol demanded he report this breach immediately. Yet as he looked at Lyra, he saw something in her eyes that spoke to a part of him he thought had died with Aria, a spark of defiance against the cold logic that governed their world. "Come with me," he said, extending his hand. "It isn't safe for you here." Lyra hesitated, looking between his offered hand and the memorial behind her. "The lights," she said softly. "They feel kind, like they wanted to protect me." Theron felt a shiver run through him. Those were the exact words Aria had used to describe the memorial gardens in her final days. Without fully understanding why, he knew that his decision here would ripple through the fabric of both their societies. "Then we shall honor their intention," he said, his voice firm with resolve. "But we must move quickly. There are those who would not understand." As Lyra took his hand, The memorial's crystals pulsed once, bathing them both in a soft golden light. Theron led her through hidden passages beneath the garden, his mind already formulating plans. He knew that by sheltering this human child, he was setting in motion events that would challenge everything his people believed in. But as they moved through the shadows of New Helios, Theron felt something he hadn't experienced since Aria's passing. Purpose. Whatever forces had guided Lyra to his daughter's memorial, they had created a connection that transcended the artificial boundaries between their species, and he would protect that connection, no matter the cost. Deep within his private sanctuary, Theron watched as Lyra slept on a hovering rest platform, her small form dwarfed by the vast chamber's crystalline architecture. The morning's events had left him deeply unsettled, not just by the impossibility of her presence, but by the growing certainty that her arrival was somehow connected to Aria. His sanctuary, hidden beneath the memorial gardens, was a testament to his status, a vast network of chambers shielded from the Council's ever-watchful eyes. Yet as he studied the sleeping child, he realized it had become something else, a refuge for a truth his people weren't ready to face. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The holographic display materialized, revealing the stern features of Counselor Naira, her silver-threaded hair and sharp features marking her as one of the eldest of their kind. "First Guardian," she began, her tone carefully neutral. "Your absence at this morning's deliberations was noted." Theron maintained his composure, though his hand instinctively moved to shield Lyra from view. "My apologies, Counselor. I was detained by matters requiring my immediate attention." Indeed, Naira's eyes narrowed. "Our sensors detected an anomaly in the memorial gardens. Would these matters be related?" Before Theron could respond, Lyra stirred, her movement catching Naira's attention. The counselor's expression hardened. "First Guardian, explain yourself. Is that a human child?" "She is a survivor," Theron replied, his voice carrying an edge of steel. "From the transport crash in Sector 7. A breach of this magnitude." Naira began, but Theron cut her off. "She was drawn to Aria's memorial," he said, watching the impact of his words. The guidance lights responded to her presence. Naira's composure cracked, revealing a flash of genuine shock. "Impossible. The systems are keyed to our biology alone." And yet it happened. Theron moved closer to the hologram, lowering his voice. "You remember Aria's final predictions, Naira, about the bridges between our species. Your daughter's theories were deemed dangerous, Theron. You know this." Naira's voice softened slightly. "Your grief has clouded your judgment." "Has it?" Theron challenged. "Or have we become so rigid in our isolation that we've forgotten what it means to evolve?" Lyra sat up then, rubbing her eyes. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, her voice small but clear. Naira's attention snapped to the child, her expression unreadable. "She speaks our language." "Universal translator," Theron explained, though something in Lyra's accent made him wonder. The child's pronunciation was too perfect, too natural. "My name is Lyra," the girl offered, meeting Naira's holographic gaze with surprising steadiness. "Are you like Theron? Someone who helps protect people?" The question seemed to catch Naira off guard. For a moment, the ancient counselor's facade cracked, revealing something almost like longing. But it vanished quickly, replaced by her usual mask of authority. "First Guardian," she said, reverting to formal address. "You have 24 hours to resolve this situation. After that, the Council will be forced to intervene." The hologram flickered out before Theron could respond. "She's scared," Lyra said quietly, surprising Theron. "Not of me. Of something else." Theron turned to her, intrigued. "How can you tell?" "Her lights. They're different from yours. More jumbled." Lyra hugged her knees to her chest, like she's trying to hide something. Theron felt a chill run down his spine. Lyra was describing aura patterns, something only the most sensitive of their own kind could perceive. First the guidance lights, now this. "Lyra," he said gently, kneeling beside her platform. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about how you got here. Not just the crash, but before. Why was your family traveling through this sector?" The girl's face scrunched in concentration. "We were running from something. Dad said we had to find the bridge makers before it was too late." Her eyes filled with tears. "He said they were the only ones who could help us understand what was happening to me." Bridge makers. The term sent a shock through Theron's system. It was what Area had called their ancestors, the ones who had first attempted contact with humans before the Council had forced their society into isolation. "And what was happening to you?" he asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "I started seeing things. Lights around people, patterns in the air." Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. "And sometimes, I can make the lights move." As if in response to her words, the crystal fixtures in the chamber pulsed softly, their light bending slightly toward her. Theron watched in amazement as the impossible happened before his eyes, a human child manipulating Heliosian technology through will alone. "You're like her," he breathed. "Like Area." Lyra looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. "Your daughter, the one from the garden." Theron nodded slowly. "She believed our species were meant to evolve together, that isolation was preventing both our peoples from reaching their true potential. She was developing abilities similar to yours before." He trailed off, the pain still too raw. A distant alarm began to sound, its low tone vibrating through the sanctuary's walls. Theron's communication device lit up with multiple urgent signals. "They're not waiting 24 hours, are they?" Lyra asked, showing wisdom beyond her years. "No," Theron replied, his mind racing through options. "They're not. Which means we need to leave. Now." As he gathered what they would need, Theron realized that Lyra's warning hadn't been a deadline. It had been a courtesy, a small window of opportunity from someone who perhaps shared more of Area's vision than she dared admit publicly. The sanctuary's lights flickered as distant security protocols engaged. They had minutes at most before the Council's forces reached them. But as Theron looked at Lyra, seeing the same determination he had once seen in Area's eyes, he knew that everything was about to change. The time for hiding was over. The bridge between their peoples had already been built, not through technology or diplomacy, but through a child who could see the light in all things. And Theron would protect that bridge with every resource at his disposal, no matter where it might lead them. The deep hum of security barriers activating echoed through the sanctuary's crystalline corridors as Theron guided Lyra through a maze of hidden passages. His mind raced through calculations, each possible escape route weighted against the Council's likely responses. The child moved silently beside him, her small hand gripping his with surprising strength. "They're coming from above," Lyra whispered, her eyes fixed on patterns in the air that only she could see. "The lights are getting darker." Theron had long since learned to trust her perceptions. In the short time since discovering her, Lyra's abilities had proven to be far more than simple sensitivity to Heliosian technology. She was, in many ways, more attuned to their world than some of his own people. A familiar voice echoed through his communication device. "First Guardian, you disappoint me." It was Sentinel Prime Chorus, the Council's chief enforcer, harboring a human child, risking contamination of our sacred spaces. "This is beneath you." Theron didn't respond, instead leading Lyra deeper into the underbelly of New Helios. They reached a sealed chamber, its walls adorned with ancient symbols that pulsed faintly in response to their presence. "What is this place?" Lyra asked, her eyes wide as she took in the elaborate markings. "Something Area discovered," Theron replied, placing his hand on a central panel. "Something the Council tried to make us forget." The chamber hummed to life, revealing a vast archive of holographic data. Images flooded the space around them, records of the first contact between humans and Heliosians centuries ago. But these weren't the sanitized versions taught in their historical archives. These showed something else entirely. They worked together, Lyra breathed, watching as images of humans and Heliosians collaborated on massive engineering projects, shared scientific discoveries, and even celebrated together, like equals. More than that, Theron said, his voice tight with emotion. They were evolving together, creating something new, until the council decided it was too dangerous. A blast shook the chamber, causing dust to rain down from above. Chorus's forces were getting closer. Arya found these archives by accident. Theron continued, quickly downloading crucial data to a portable device. She discovered that our isolation wasn't about protecting our purity. It was about controlling the direction of our evolution. The council feared what we might become if we allowed ourselves to change. Another explosion, closer this time. Lyra grabbed Theron's arm, her eyes wide with fear. They're trying to trap us in here. Theron nodded grimly. Yes, but they don't know about. He paused as a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. This. They hurried through the opening just as the chamber's main entrance burst inward. Chorus's voice boomed through the space. Find them. The child must not leave New Helios. As they ran through the ancient tunnel, Lyra suddenly stopped, her face scrunched in concentration. Wait, something's wrong. The lights ahead. They're wrong. Theron trusted her instinct without question, pulling them into a small alcove just as a squad of security forces rushed past their position in the adjacent corridor. Her ability to read energy patterns had saved them once again. Lyra, he said softly once the danger had passed, I need to know. Did your father tell you anything else about why you were seeking the bridge makers? The girl's face clouded with memory. He said I wasn't the only one. That there were others like me, but they were being taken away. He was scared that if they found me. She trailed off, shuddering. Theron felt a chill run through him. Taken by whom? He didn't know, but he said the bridge makers would understand what was happening, that they'd seen it before. Another explosion rocked the tunnel, closer this time. Theron made a quick decision, scooping Lyra into his arms. Hold tight, he instructed, activating his personal shield generator. They would need its protection for what came next. They emerged from the tunnel into a vast underground hangar, a relic from the age of cooperation that the Council had failed to discover. Within it sat a single ship, its design a hybrid of human and Heliosian technology. Another of Arya's secrets, preserved against the day it might be needed. Can you fly it? Lyra asked as they approached the vessel. We're about to find out, Theron replied, his hand hovering over the ship's access panel. To his amazement, it responded not to his touch, but to Lyra's presence, its systems humming to life. It likes us, she said simply, a small smile crossing her face despite their dire situation. The hangar's main doors exploded inward as Chorus himself led a contingent of elite guards into the space. The Sentinel Prime's usually perfect composure was cracked, his face twisted with something between rage and fear. You cannot leave. First Guardian, he shouted. The child belongs to us now. The process has already begun. Theron's blood ran cold at those words, pieces falling into place. The Council hadn't just been maintaining isolation. They had been actively suppressing the evolution that had begun centuries ago. And now that humans were showing signs of the change. She belongs to no one, Theron declared, his voice carrying across the hangar as he and Lyra boarded the ship. And neither do we. The vessel's ancient engines roared to life, responding to their combined presence in ways Theron didn't fully understand. As security forces opened fire, their energy weapons splashing harmlessly against the ship's hybrid shields, he realized that this machine, like Lyra herself, was a bridge between worlds, a testament to what their peoples could achieve together. They burst from the hangar into the violet skies of New Helios, leaving behind not just their pursuers, but centuries of carefully maintained separation. As the city's spires receded behind them, Lyra pressed her hand against the viewport. Where will we go? She asked. To find others like you, Theron replied, setting course for the outer systems, and to finish what Area started, what our ancestors began. It's time to rebuild the bridge. The hybrid vessel sliced through the darkness of space, its unique energy signature making it nearly invisible to conventional tracking systems. Inside, Theron monitored their course while Lyra sat cross-legged in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes closed in concentration as she sensed the energy flows around them. 3 pursuit ships, she murmured, not opening her eyes. But they're looking in the wrong direction. The lights are confusing them. Theron nodded, still amazed by her abilities. The ship, which he had come to learn was called the Nexus, seemed to amplify Lyra's natural talents. Together, they were able to bend energy patterns in ways that made them virtually undetectable. "We're approaching the Meridian Nebula," he informed her. "If Area's records are correct, there should be a sanctuary there, a place where others like you might have gathered." Lyra's eyes opened, reflecting the swirling colors of the nebula ahead. "I can feel them," she whispered, "like echoes in the light." But her face creased with worry. "Something's wrong." Before Theron could respond, their sensors detected a massive energy surge. A ship emerged from the nebula's gases, its design unlike anything he had ever seen, a perfect fusion of organic and technological elements. "That's not the Council," Lyra said, her voice tight with fear. "It's them. The ones who were taking people like me." The mysterious vessel's presence confirmed Theron's worst suspicions. The Council wasn't acting alone in their suppression of evolution. There were others who feared the bridging of their species. A transmission cut through their communications, carrying a voice that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies simultaneously. "Surrender the child, First Guardian. She belongs with her own kind now." "Her own kind," Theron replied, his voice sharp. "And what kind would that be?" "The next step," the voice answered. "The fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. Surely you've noticed that she's more than just sensitive to your technology. She's becoming something new, something that threatens the balance we've maintained for millennia." Lyra gripped Theron's arm. "They're lying," she said firmly. "They don't want to help us evolve. They want to control it, to make sure it happens their way." The ship's sensors blared a warning as energy tentacles reached out from the mysterious vessel, attempting to ensnare them. But Lyra was faster. Her hands pressed against the Nexus's control panel, and suddenly the ship's hybrid systems responded in ways Theron had never seen before. The space around them seemed to fold, energy patterns shifting and redirecting the tentacles back upon themselves. The mysterious vessel reeled, clearly not expecting such resistance. "Impossible," the voice transmitted. "How is she doing this?" Theron watched in amazement as Lyra guided their ship through maneuvers that should have been beyond its capabilities. She wasn't just sensing the energy patterns now. She was weaving them, creating new pathways through space itself. "My dad told me stories," Lyra said as they dove through the nebula's shifting gases. "About the original bridge makers. He said they didn't just connect our peoples. They found ways to connect with the universe itself. That's what these others are afraid of. They don't want us to remember how to do that." The pursuit ship launched another attack, this time with weapons that seemed designed to disrupt the very fabric of space-time. But Lyra's connection to the Nexus was growing stronger. The ship's hybrid nature wasn't just a combination of technologies. It was a key to understanding how everything was connected. "There," Lyra pointed to a pattern in the nebula that Theron's eyes could barely perceive. "That's where we need to go. That's where the others are hiding." As they approached the coordinates, something remarkable happened. The nebula's gases began to part, revealing a massive structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was neither purely human nor Heliosian in design, but something entirely new. "The sanctuary," Theron breathed, recognizing it from Aria's research. She was right about everything. The mysterious vessel attempted one final attack, but this time, the sanctuary itself responded. Waves of energy rippled out, creating a barrier that their pursuers couldn't penetrate. As they docked with the hidden station, Theron and Lyra were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. The sanctuary was filled with beings of both human and Heliosian origin, but all of them bore the same luminescent quality that he had begun to notice in Lyra. They were the evidence of natural evolution, the bridge builders that both the Council and their mysterious opponents had tried to suppress. A tall figure stepped forward, her form seeming to shift between human and Heliosian appearances. "Welcome home," she said, her voice carrying the same multilayered quality that Lyra's was beginning to develop. "We've been waiting for you." "Who are you?" Theron asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Someone who, like your daughter, saw the truth," she replied. "My name is Iris. I was part of the original Bridgemaker project, before they tried to shut us down. We've been gathering others like us, preparing for the day when both our peoples would be ready to remember what we were meant to become." Lyra stepped forward, her hand still holding Theron's. "The lights here, they're like music, like everything is singing together." Iris smiled. "That's because here, we don't try to separate the energies of different species or technologies. We let them flow together, the way they were always meant to." But their moment of discovery was interrupted by a massive shockwave that rocked the sanctuary. On their sensors, dozens of council ships appeared, led by the mysterious vessel that had pursued them. "They followed us," Lyra whispered, fear and determination warring in her voice. "No," Iris replied, her expression grave but resolute. "They followed hope. And now we must decide whether to hide again, or finally stand and show both our peoples what we can become when we stop fearing change." Theron looked at Lyra, seeing in her eyes the same courage he had seen in Aria's. The time for running was over. The bridge between worlds wasn't just about connecting different species, it was about embracing the evolution that came from that connection. As the sanctuary's defenders mobilized, Theron knew they were about to face a battle that would determine not just their fate, but the future of both their peoples. And this time, they would face it together. The sanctuary hummed with energy as its inhabitants prepared for the coming confrontation. Through the vast observation windows, Theron watched as the combined fleet of council ships and the mysterious vessel took up attack positions. But his attention was drawn to something else. The way the station's very structure seemed to be responding to the collective consciousness of those within. "They're afraid," Lyra said, standing beside him. Her appearance had subtly changed in the hours since their arrival, a soft luminescence now surrounding her form. "Not just of us, but of what we represent." Iris approached them, her form shifting like starlight on water. "The Council and their allies have maintained power through separation, keeping our peoples apart, controlling the flow of evolution. But they cannot stop what has already begun." The station shuddered as the first wave of attacks struck its shields. But instead of weakening, the barriers seemed to grow stronger, transforming the enemy's energy into something new. "That's it," Lyra breathed, her eyes wide with understanding. "We don't need to fight them. We need to show them." Before anyone could stop her, she ran to the station's central chamber, a vast space where the energies of human and Heliosian technology merged in dancing patterns of light. Theron followed, understanding dawning as he watched her place her hands on the control interface. "Everyone," Lyra called out, her voice carrying a resonance that touched something deep within all who heard it. "Connect with the station. Let them see what we can become." One by one, the sanctuary's inhabitants, human, Heliosian, and those who had evolved beyond such distinctions, joined their consciousness with the station's systems. Theron found himself drawn into the merger, feeling for the first time the full potential that his daughter had glimpsed before her death. Through their combined awareness, they could sense the fear and determination of those attacking them. But more than that, they could reach out and touch the very foundations of reality that bound all things together. The mysterious vessel launched what was meant to be a devastating attack, but as the energy reached the sanctuary's shields, something remarkable happened. The combined consciousness of those within transformed the destructive force into pure creative potential. sending it rippling back through space in waves of enlightenment. "Stop this at once." The voice of Sentinel Prime Chorus boomed through their communications. "You risk everything we have built." "No," Theron responded, his voice carrying the weight of countless others. "We risk only the walls that have kept us from our true potential." Through their shared vision, they could see the effect their transformation was having. On some of the Council ships, crew members were beginning to resonate with the energy, their own suppressed abilities awakening. The mysterious vessel tried to retreat, but it was too late. The wave of change had already begun. Lyra, now glowing like a newborn star, turned to Theron. "This is what my father saw in his research. What Area discovered. We're not meant to be separate. We're meant to be this." The sanctuary itself began to transform, its structure opening like a flower to reveal the true nature of the Bridgemaker's vision. It wasn't just a hiding place. It was a seed, planted centuries ago, waiting for the right moment to bloom. From the Council ships, signals of surrender began to flood in. The mysterious vessel, its crew unable to resist the awakening of their own suppressed potential, finally revealed their true nature. They were the guardians of the old order, tasked with preventing this very evolution. But now, they too were changing. "Look," Lyra pointed to the space around them. The energy patterns that only she had been able to see were now visible to all, a vast network of connections linking every living thing, every particle of matter, every wave of light. Iris stepped forward, her form now fully embodying the bridge between species. "This is only the beginning. For centuries, we hid and waited, gathering those who showed signs of the change. But now, there can be no more hiding." Through their shared consciousness, Theron felt the presence of his daughter, not as a ghost or memory, but as part of the vast tapestry of existence that they were all connected to. Area had seen this future, had given her life to protect the possibility of its arrival. The mysterious vessel's commander, their form now shifting like liquid starlight, transmitted one final message. "We were wrong. All this time, we thought we were protecting the natural order. But this is the natural order." As the wave of transformation spread outward from the sanctuary, touching ship after ship, planet after planet, Theron looked at Lyra, the child who had started as a refugee and become a catalyst for change. She smiled up at him, her green eyes now containing galaxies of possibility. "What happens now?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Now," Theron replied, feeling the weight of centuries of isolation falling away. "We build bridges across all the spaces that separate us, not just between humans and Heliosians, but between everything that exists." The sanctuary, once hidden in the heart of a nebula, now shone like a beacon across space and time, a symbol of what was possible when fear gave way to understanding, when separation yielded to unity. And in that light, as both their peoples began to awaken to their true potential, Theron realized that this wasn't just an ending to their journey. It was the beginning of something far greater. The bridge makers of old had seen this future, had planted the seeds of transformation throughout the cosmos. Now, at last, those seeds were blooming, and the universe itself was remembering how to sing.